Hi guys, any conversation that begins with "I'm not racist but" generally goes in an interesting direction. Now, GB News were at the Bell Hotel in Epping, obviously interviewing people following its closure to asylum seekers and the celebrations that are taking place as a result of that. Now, they interviewed one guy in particular who doesn't seem to understand the difference between an asylum seeker and an economic migrant. And he also wants British people prioritised, but there's also an issue with that. Have a listen.
Which was that it's not about, being racist or people who want to come here legally to work and pay tax and all that stuff. This is about a sense of principle about people who come here legally.
To be honest with you, I'm not being funny. If someone comes here, works and pays the taxes, right, then the British ain't got a problem with that. But when you come here, you don't do nothing and you get everything. That you got the veterans on the streets, you got old people on the streets who get nothing. When you got these people getting nothing and you got these hotels that they're paying over ridiculous prices for, it's not fair, is it? It's not fair. Let's put our people first. Right, not being racist, but let's put our people first. Our veterans, our elderly,
pensioners, exactly.
Yeah. You got the pensioners. They're talking about the heat and all that. Let's sort our country out first.
Okay.
If we sort our country out, then we can probably give more to other countries.
Okay.
But let's sort our country out first.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Okay. Look, I don't think this is a bad guy. I just think that he's misinformed. He doesn't understand the difference. And of course, GB News is not going to inform him on the difference between asylum seekers and economic migrants. He's saying that people are there, they're doing nothing and they're getting everything. They're asylum seekers, they're not allowed to work. This should have been pointed out to him by the GB News reporter, but of course it will not be. If asylum seekers were allowed to work, they would pay taxes, they would contribute. And there wouldn't be an issue with them getting everything and doing nothing. Now, this other point about we need to look after our own. What about the veterans? What about the elderly? What about poor British people? And why can it not be both? Why does it have to be one or the other? If you allow asylum seekers to work, then they don't need to be a burden on the state. So you can redirect that money. It doesn't really work like that, but you can, if you want to think about it in that way, you can redirect the money to the poorest in society. Now, the problem here is that the poorest in society are looking around and saying, hey, we're being treated unfairly. We are looking at X hotels housing asylum seekers. They get free food, they get mobile phones, they get all these things. And of course, they're receiving this information also from social media and the likes of GB News and Talk TV. Uncritically, of course. They're being told these people get everything, our own British people get nothing. And that's unfair. And that lack of fairness is driving people to these protests. This is why it's so important that you have a robust media that calls out the crap, that explains to people why the asylum seekers are receiving these things. Politicians are not going to do it. It's the job of the media to do it. The reporter should have been there explaining to this guy or the other people who were present the reality of the situation. But of course he's not going to do that because he is happy to see more protests. He's happy to see these hotels closed. He's happy to see very negative rhetoric towards asylum seekers and immigrants because that's GB News' goal, it seems. So we have to push back on it. People have to have it explained to them that the asylum seekers don't want to be in hotels. They would prefer to be working. They would prefer to have normal lives. Are there bad eggs? Of course there are. There are bad eggs in every society. But generally we don't focus on the bad eggs in other situations. We focus on the positives. And there are decent people in those hotels who just want to improve their lives, who would like to be working, who would like to be contributing, but they can't. The people, ordinary people, are angry. They see others receiving things but they're not receiving. Now, are you going to hear calls for increases in taxes to deal with homelessness by the likes of GB News and Talk TV? Of course not. They will say we care about our own people when we're talking about immigration. But if you take immigration out of it, when was the last time you heard a story about improving the situation for homeless people or dealing with the problems that the elderly face? And I'm not just talking about the winter fuel allowance. I'm talking about problems in general. There are many problems elderly people face. When was the last time you heard about the NHS waiting list being dealt with? Not blaming immigrants for it, but just dealing with it from the likes of GB News or Talk TV. No, you never hear this because that's not their goal. Their goal is to amplify issues like immigration because it serves the richest in society. Because if you're focused on this, you're not complaining about cuts to public services. You're not complaining about the richest in society getting more and more cash at your expense. If these protests were directed, if the anger at these protests was directed at the richest in society, you would see massive change, and it would improve these people's lives. But they're being distracted, and this hotel will now close to asylum seekers. There is an appeal going in that may change the situation, but I think it's likely to close. And these asylum seekers will go somewhere else. They will become somebody else's problem. And there is no solution here. The lives of these people will not really improve. The media circus will go somewhere else, and these people will be forgotten. And their problems, when it comes to housing, when it comes to poverty, will remain, which is really sad. These people are being used by the media to weaponize an issue, and then as soon as that has been achieved, they'll be forgotten about. I can guarantee it. And you know this as well. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.